Greetings to you, lovely students. I welcome you to today's online class. In today's class, I'll be taking you the topic laboratory experimentation involving soils. We are after this video in our week 3 in class. We are going to be taking the live practicals of test involving soils, and there are 2 experiments we'll be taking in the science lab. One of the tests is to compare the water holding capacity of 3 soil types. We are going to be looking at sandy soils, clay soils, and loamy soil. We'll also be looking at the moisture content of a moist sample of soil, because it is very essential that as a student of agricultural science, you should have a knowledge of how soil are usually tested in the laboratory. Now, why is it essential to carry out soil tests? Now, because most farmers, they rely on the soil to provide nutrients for their growing crops. It is essential that as an average farmer should have an idea of the composition of the soil he or she is planting on, whether the soil is acidic, whether the soil is alkaline, whether the soil is very fertile or not, which will give an idea of the type of crop to be planted on that soil. Now, the materials needed to carry out determination of moisture content in soils: we have the soil sample. We have soil sample. The soil sample must be moist. It must not be a dry soil sample. It is the soil sample will actually be weighed at the beginning of the experiment using the weighing scale. So the weighing scale is also very essential, and it is always very advisable to use a digital weighing scale. And the weighing scale must be able to measure milligrams. Now, we also have the stirring rod, which is usually used to stir the soil while it is being heated. You can't leave the soil without stirring it. And then we have the evaporating dish. The evaporating dish is to store the soil during burning. And then we have the Bunsen burner, which will be used to evaporate the moisture in the soil. And then we have the wire gauze. The fire must not go directly to the evaporating dish, or else it can crack. The evaporation dish can crack, so it's better to have a wire gauze underneath it. And then we have the stopwatch. The stopwatch is to time the soil from the time of from the commencement of burning to the end of the burning. Now, we have the tripod stand, which usually place the evaporating dish on. So, materials needed to carry out comparison of water holding capacity of soil types. Here we'll be looking at 3 soil types when we get to the class. We'll be looking at the sandy soil, we'll be looking at the clay soil, and the loamy soil. Now, this is a typical example of how the setup will look like in the laboratory. And the materials needed include the funnel. We have funnel, which will be used to, the soil will be placed in the funnel. After placing the cotton will go first, then the soil will go in next, then water will be placed inside the funnel. We also have the measuring cylinders. In this case, we'll be making use of 1 liter measuring cylinder. We also have the soil samples, 3 major soil samples, in order to determine the ones that hold water most and the one that holds water the least. And also, we'll be using the stopwatch. The duration of the experiment for the stopwatch will be 10 minutes to see the soil that drains out water most. And then we also have the cotton wool. The cotton wool will be placed, like I said earlier, to be placed inside the funnel before placing the soil in it. Now, I have attached 2 videos to explain these 2 experiments. Happy viewing.
Soil is the outermost unconsolidated superficial layer of the Earth's crust subjected to physical and chemical changes, and which contains both biotic and abiotic components in different proportions. It is usually differentiated into horizons of minerals and organic constituents of variable depths. In brief, soil can be defined as that region on the Earth's surface where geology and biology meet. Pedology is the study of soil. Soil moisture is the amount of water present in soil. It depends upon relative humidity of the atmospheric and soil air, humus content, chemical composition, and texture of the soil. The major source of soil moisture is rain. There are four types of water present in soil: gravitational water, capillary water, hygroscopic water, and combined water. Soil moisture, especially capillary water, plays a vital role in its ability to properly sustain plant growth in it. Too much or too less of moisture is almost always detrimental to both plant and animal life in soil. Productivity and fertility of soil is therefore highly dependent on the presence of soil moisture of the right amount. In this experiment, we'll demonstrate in detail the crucible method for the determination of soil moisture content of 3 different samples of soil collected from 3 different locations. I'll also briefly discuss the hot air oven method at the end of this video. For this experiment, we'll need the following: 3 soil samples taken from different locations. Remove the larger pieces of stones and plant debris from the samples for accurate results. Bunsen burner or spirit lamp or a hot plate, a pair of tongs, tripod stand with wire gauge, 3 porcelain dishes or crucibles, weighing scale accurate to at least 1 gram. You can also use a pocket digital scale, 3 spatulas or spoons, desiccator containing a suitable desiccant. To begin the experiment, take the dry china dish or crucible and heat it for 3 to 5 minutes using a burner, a spirit lamp, or a hot plate. This is in order to remove all traces of moisture from the dish. Remove the dish from the heat source and allow it to cool to room temperature, preferably inside a desiccator chamber, and then record the weight of the empty, dry dish. Now add 2 to 3 tablespoons full or 5 to 6 spatulas full of the first soil sample to it. Record the gross weight of the container plus the soil sample. Now place the dish on the tripod stand and heat it for about 1 hour or so. You can also use a hot plate for heating. At the end of about an hour, remove the dish from the burner and allow it to cool to room temperature, preferably inside a desiccator chamber. Weigh the dish again and record the weight. This gives you the gross weight of the dish plus the dry soil. Repeat the same process with the remaining 2 samples of soil. Tabulate the initial weights, final weights, and the difference between initial and final weights of all the 3 samples of soil as shown in this table. The difference between the initial and final weights for each sample of soil will give the soil moisture content in grams for that sample. To determine the soil moisture content in terms of percentage of dry weight, the formula shown below this table here may be used for each soil sample. This method is basically the same as the previously discussed method, the only difference being that in this method a hot air oven is used instead of a burner for drying the soil samples. Here, the weight of a perfectly dry china dish or crucible or a petri dish is recorded as before. It is then filled with 2 to 3 tablespoons of the soil sample. The combined weight of the dish and the sample is recorded. The dish containing the sample is then placed inside the oven. The temperature of the oven is then set at 110 degrees Celsius and the soil sample is allowed to dry for about 24 hours. At the end of this time period, The dish is removed from the oven using a pair of tongs and allowed to cool to room temperature for a few hours inside a desiccator chamber containing a suitable desiccant such as silica gel or fused calcium chloride. The dish containing the dried and cooled soil sample is then removed from the desiccator and the final weight of the soil recorded after making deductions of the weight of the empty dish. Subsequent calculations for determining the soil moisture content are the same as the previously discussed crystal.
Now the second video that I'll be attaching to this video has to do with water retention capacity. Happy viewing. I will urge you to also make some jottings while you watch.
We need to know how much water soil can retain, and we call it the water retention capacity of soil. It is important to the farmer because if the soil retains too much water, the soil will become waterlogged and plants won't grow well. Sandy soil, for instance, might let through too much water and the plants will dry out too fast. Loam, which is the type of soil that's mostly preferred in agriculture and in gardening, might have a in-between water holding capacity. In other words, just perfect for the plant's needs. Now what I have here are 3 measuring cylinders, 100 milliliter each, 3 funnels with filter paper and soil specimens. Let me just show you how one should fold the filter paper over in half and then into quarters, but with a slight overlap. Open it, one part on the one side, put it in your cylinder. Okay. Now we have the same amount of soil in each of the funnels. I took 3 big scoops of soil. Of course, if you want to have exact measurements, you should weigh the soils to have the same amount of soil. And then I pour 100 milliliters of water into each funnel. This is the loam, the garden soil. And you can see the water is already started to drip through. The more clay soil and the sand. Right, now this is going to take a while, so let's have a look at the samples that I did earlier this morning. Right, number 1, sand. Remember, it had 100 milliliters of water poured into the funnel. Number 2, loam. And number 3, clay. Perfect. Can you see that the sand let through most of the water, very low water holding capacity? The clay only left, if we read this carefully, about 42 of the 100 milliliters, and loam in the middle. And look at the color of the water that ran through the loam, dissolved salts, which also tells you and gives you an idea that this type of soil contains a lot of nutrients. So by comparing the amount of water that ran through, we can determine and compare the water retention capacity of different soil types.
It's nice having you in today's class. I hope today's class you were able to get some information on some experiments carried out on soils and the relevance, the essence of carrying out all these tests. The farmer needs to have an idea of the composition and the chemical condition of the soil he is planting on in order to have a very good harvest and also to prevent losses on his farm. I hope to have you in my next class. To have a wonderful time. Bye.